everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. Welcome back. You're still watching Moneyline with Nancy, and as we promised earlier, our big conversation today focuses on the Senate's probe into NNPC Ltd, following allegations of 210 trillion naira discrepancy in its financial statements spanning from 2017 to 2023. And to help us make sense of the drama behind the digits, clarity and depth to this topic is Professor Wumi Iledare, highly respected professor of petroleum economics with over 4 decades of experience in analyzing the geopolitics and global economics of oil and gas. Is an expert in international petroleum economics and fiscal regime analysis, and former president of the Nigerian Association for Energy Economics. Professor Wumi Iledare, good morning and welcome to the program.
Nancy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Prof. Now, let's start with the big picture. The Public Accounts Committee has alleged that a 210 trillion naira discrepancy is found in NNPC's audited accounts. As an economist, as a petroleum economist, my first question to you is that how do you interpret this figure? Does it reflect a real financial gap or a misreading of accounting principles? I was speaking with, I spoke with the chairman of that committee on, was it on Friday or so? I had to put a call to him, Senator Aliyu Wadada, to make me understand further what the committee meant, and he tried to explain to me that receivables were treated as assets, accrued expenses as liabilities, that the NNPC Limited couldn't substantiate their figures, and according to him, what he told me that those figures were being fraudulently created. What do you think? How do you interpret this, Prof?
Well, thank you again. I know the numbers are quite alarming and probably sensational, in my opinion. But I want to look at it for educational purposes without taking sides. I want to explain that if you look at Nigerian's upstream sector and look at the way it operates, that's what we call concessionary, and that's what we call the contractual. Now, if you look at the concessionary, you have joint venture operations. And when you look at joint venture, they produce, before the PSC came in, quite a lot of Nigerian oil and gas. If people want to understand the joint venture operation, it's more or less a partnership between the government, which is represented by NNPC Ltd today, and international companies, and even some indigenous companies. And then each of them has what we call working interest, and thereby they pay a proportion of whatever it costs to develop, produce, and generate revenue. The total revenue is accounted for by the partners. The same thing with the cost. So if you look at the revenue and interpret it to be the operated total cash flow, it's very misleading. And if you look at account receivable and account payable, and you add the two of them together, that could also be a misleading information. And I just cannot see how an external auditor and an internal auditor will make such an alarming mistake. So that makes me to not necessarily take the figure. And Nancy, I know we have a lot of things to talk about. It reminds me of 2.8 billion missing petroleum revenue during Obasanjo's regime. In fact, there was even an Enrique panel who looked at it. Until today, we don't have anything. So I want to just look at something deeper than that 200 trillion that is being just taken out of context, in my opinion. And that's why I wanted to start with the JV model.
I like that you
An
brought...
understanding of the JV model is very important. And I will expatiate on that as because you have cash call that you have to pay out of whatever revenue that you get. And there's a Fiscal Responsibility Act. There's also a Supreme Court judgment. There's a PIA, and there's also a judgment as to what amount of money that goes into NNPC actually belongs to the Federation.
Prof,
these are facts.
Yes. Prof, I would want us to distill on that because you're bringing up a lot of issues. I hear you when you talked about the 2.8 billion naira saga. If I'm not mistaken, that should be years ago. Is it not the Joseph Wyas, if I'm not mistaken?
You are extremely correct. Yeah. That's Dr. Wyas' Senate.
Yes. So, and we did not get so much explanation from that. Of course, we didn't have social media then as we have now. I would like you to distill on that. I would also like you to distill on the JV cash calls which you've just mentioned. Please, can you just explain to our viewers? Because like I mentioned at the beginning of this program, that this industry is so technical, but it's so technical and consequential that we need to understand what this is. And that was why I mentioned earlier, if this is a real financial gap or it's a misreading of accounting principles. So please help us explain.
All right, ma'am. Thank you for your question. Let's take an OML, that's a JV, under PWI enterprising, because I don't want to mention a particular company. And the government is in JV partner with me, 60-40, to develop that OML. If I spent $100 in a period, the government is going to put $60 for every $100 spent to develop and produce the barrel. If I then produce 100 barrels, the government, that's NNPC, then will take 60 barrels. And then is going to sell that 60 barrel, let's say at $100 per barrel. That is revenue. But that 60 barrel that I was given, I must have given $60. If I don't give it, and that's why you have the idea of cash call, when the JV operators, which is PWR now, will be demanding that $60 that they're supposed to have contributed to the $100 that I spent to generate the 60 barrels that was given to me. Just an example. And then when the government does not, NNPC did not have money, because of government encroachment for many years, the federal government of Nigeria, either on behalf of the Federation, looks at NNPC as a cash cow. And they then fall behind year over year on their cash call. In fact, that's the reason why we have production sharing contract today, because nobody wanted to go to deep water and have to be looking at cash call. But the PSC is different from concessionary. The PSC, the company brings the entire money and recover it from the oil they produce based on certain cost recovery limit and profit or split. But the JV is different. The government contributes to develop the asset and get rewarded proportionately to their risk. But you cannot take the total revenue that they generated as government take. No, that's incorrect. And the Supreme Court actually ruled against that. And even if you look at the PIA now, they don't surrender the operational cash surplus to the Federation. Now, they pay taxes, they pay royalty, and they pay dividend, but they do not give their cash surplus to the government the way they used to do in the past. So if you are going to now lump 2016 to 2023 without realizing that from 2001 August to 2003 is a different banana. And so we should just not be sentimental. We should look at the numbers, get professionals to scrutinize it, instead of just blowing the same air we blew I think it's 19, I'm just trying to remember, Obasanjo's regime for 2.8 billion missing, which was actually in the thin air. Nothing came out of it. Because it's numbers. Numbers do not lie. And there's a difference between truth and facts. The truth is subjective. Facts are verifiable.
So, Prof, what are you trying to say here? Is this a case of financial illiteracy? Let me put it that way. Yes, at high levels in public office. Is that what you are saying? What is the quality of financial oversight of Nigeria's legislature? Because what I can read from what you're saying is that the documents were not well read. Is that what you're saying?
Well, listen, I've not had any conversation with them. I'm not here to condemn them. Neither am I saying here they don't have an oversight. I want to be careful the type of language that I use, on the basis of who I am. Because the word illiteracy may be misread. But I would think in terms of a distinction between transformational leadership and governance and transactional leadership and governance. I would expect, if the chairman will be having a public press conference, I would expect him to have experts that have scrutinized, and he will be reading from a memo that's given to them. I actually pitied the CFO when I look at him on the stage and he was trying to answer the chairman's question. The oil and gas industry is more complex than selling guguru and ekpa. And when you have all of these committee people in the National Assembly who will not do due diligence to get experts' opinion on those type of issues and just go to the press, to me, I'm not particularly joyful, because it is whatever you call your calabash that they will use it for. Looking at where NNPC is going, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should cover fiscal irresponsibility. No, but you are having a company you are going to build to be able to go to the public for investment, and you are making allegation. 200 trillion is how many years budget during the time in which we are looking at it? Who are the National Assembly financial experts that really look at these books of NNPC and making informed intellectual argument about this 200 trillion? I think it's more or less arithmetical misinterpretation. Perhaps where you are adding account receivable plus account payable and saying it's 200 trillion that is missing. Perhaps, listen, maybe there's a financial expert, but I wanted to see them beside the chairman and the Senate, or at their back when they're asking this type of questions, and not just what I'll call, transactional, institutional capture mentality. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I won't
Prof.
call them illiterate. I think it's not a good thing to say.
No,
but I question the competency of some of those people without technical experts assisting them.
Prof, but even listening to the CFO of NNPC Limited that day too, he couldn't also come across with clarity. And I would definitely say this is still a developing story. We're expecting the NNPC Limited to respond to the 11 queries. I was made to understand, like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, that I had to speak with the chair himself of that committee a few days ago. And the committee has given NNPC Limited 11 questions to answer, which there is being expected this week, sometime this week, to answer. And the 11 questions are from those financial statements that the NNPC Limited has submitted, which is also public according to what they said. Do you believe, even from the demeanor of the CFO himself of NNPC Limited, was that believable from what he was saying? Did he have a grasp of what the explanation of what he was giving to the Public Accounts Committee?
Well, listen, I can identify with anybody testifying to the National Assembly anywhere in the world. Because whatever you say, you're under oath. So you must be sure, and that's why you see him in his hesitancy. And I want to give an example of those presidents of Harvard, Columbia University, and Yale, when they were testifying in Congress about some of the issues that were going on. When you go to a government-backed institutions, you have to be careful with what you say. Yes, it may not be a public spokesperson. Some people don't have the ability to express themselves the way they can write. Honestly, I've not seen the books, but I would be surprised if NNPC is not able to answer some of those questions. They're not questions that you may not be able to answer them in a politically correct manner, but in a professional, technical manner. I don't expect him not to be able to provide a legitimate answer. Whether they are going to accept is a different thing. And that's why I'm making reference to 2.8 billion saga. And that's the context from which I want us to look at this. I'm not being dismissive. But I will be surprised if NNPC will issue a public statement with 200 trillion naira discrepancies. I just could not. To me, then NNPC might as well just fold up if they can do such a thing. I will not believe it, that they will have an accounting error through internal audit and external auditor. But I understand. I can cite example of where auditors do make mistakes. Enron collapsed today because of accounting mistake. Otto Anderson, who was a well-respected oil and gas accounting business, also folded up. And that's why I continue to plead with Nigerians that are managing the wealth of the nation to move away from this transactional mindset with the people you recruit to do professional job for you. I see it happen. Even people that you hire to train your staff, you have to be careful, because now with this type of news, getting investor will be a little bit difficult. So we need to be mindful. And even the National Assembly, before going out to the press to make this type of statement, make sure you have technical expertise that have reviewed. And I'm not talking about Rugbe experts. I'm talking about professionals who understand the implication of this type of thing. Honestly, I will put my heart with NNPC. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, Prof, isn't that also a very dicey situation for you to say you put your heart with NNPC without even knowing what the books are right now? Because no. According to what the Senate committee chair did say, that NNPC claims over 103 trillion naira in accrued expenses. Take off your toga. Don't support anyone, because this program, what I'm doing this morning is trying to look at the facts. You know, the drama behind, I'm not concerned with the drama behind those digits. I'm taking a look at the digits that we were given publicly. From a petroleum economist lens, what categories of expenses do you think could justify such a figure? And what could raise red flags? 103 trillion naira is huge. Like you've said, receivables, 107 trillion naira.
Let me say it again, Nancy, without missing word.
Yes.
Let me say it again, Nancy, without missing word. I will take my act off for professionals, competent professionals, than politicians. I say it. But let's talk about 103 trillion naira. You know how much it costs to drill a well, a single well in Nigeria? Convert it to naira. And if there's an account receivable for even 5 wells, you know how much that would be? It's a lot of money. I'm not even talking about infrastructure development, building pipelines. I'm not talking about even building a separator that will break in the onshore, that will separate oil, gas, and water. I have utmost respect for Nigerian professionals. And if not because of the politicization of NNPC Limited, I'm telling you that they are capable of delivering. Well, so again, I take my hat off for Nigerian professionals that are not politicized. And I don't want to get emotional now. Because in this, I'm talking about my heart for professionals in the oil and gas business or political leaders. Some of the problem that NNPC is having, in my opinion, is the characterization of NNPC as a cash cow. And that's what you see. Listen, I'm going to answer your question in a logical manner. It's just like me. I'm the household husband instead of household wife. My wife is doing all the work, making all the money, and giving me the money to spend. And we have a budget for us to maintain our household. But all of a sudden, my wife will call on me with respect to sending money to XYZ from the money she gave me. And when the time comes, I took the money out of the money she gave me that I spent out, not on the budget, and you are going to be blaming me. No, I'm going to give you whatever is the balance that is left from the money that I collected on our behalf. So it's the same thing. NNPC, yes, collecting money on behalf of the government. The government is spending money that doesn't go through the budget, right? And at the end, what will NNPC do? I'm not defending them. We are talking about facts. Am I saying they are perfect? Of course not, because NNPC is politicized for many years. And that's why you see some of this problem with cash cow. Revenue is not the same thing as net revenue. But the government does not seem to realize that. And the National Assembly, they are politicians. And most of the time they are myopic. They are looking at the next election. And whatever they can do that make them look as if they are doing something, they will do. And of course, NNPC is the point back. I want to say again, I don't represent them. I don't even do anything for NNPC, for your information. No. But I educate the public on the oil and gas sector. The professionals in the oil and gas sector that are Nigerians, they are competent, they can be trusted. If there are problems, they are the political professionals that are in the business. And they are the people that needed to be rooted out and put competent people in the right place. And there are many of them that are competent in NNPC. And I want to say it again for the professional. It's not that you cannot make accounting error, but it's not something that you are going to declare missing. 200 trillion naira missing? What's the profit of NNPC over those period of time that you are looking at?
Prof.
And you need to break them into components. You need to look at NNPC limited period and NNPC before
PIA.
August 2021. That's what I expect them to do, not lump it and just throw number outside just to create sensation. That's the way I look at it.
Now, Prof, how should NNPC be run? How should, because to what extent does this development now perhaps position NNPC as a commercially viable limited liability company post Petroleum Industry Act? You understand what I'm saying? Because if it is a commercial company, should the National Assembly even still have authority to oversight them? I know this question will be, some people like, what? But that is what it is. I must ask the hard questions. You understand what I'm saying? Do they still, even though it's owned by, of course, Nigeria, MOPI, and the government, how does it position NNPC? What kind of, is it in a precarious situation? Because it's the cash cow, just like you mentioned earlier on?
Well, I know your time is so precious. We can find another time to discuss this. Listen, the National Assembly can call Dangote.
Okay.
If Dangote is doing anything
Call
that
them
is
to order.
affecting national economy, the National Assembly can even summon me, and I'll quickly go and get a lawyer.
Okay.
They have the power. However, there are also acts that they pass that they must obey. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is not binding on NNPC. Second, the Petroleum Industry Act isolates NNPC from political interference. Whether they will do it is a different ballgame. But the National Assembly has the power under the Constitution to query any institution, whether private or public. Having said that, how can NNPC be governed according to the tenets and provisions in the PIA? I'm not sure the National Assembly who passed the PIA really wants that to be done. I'm not sure the president himself really wants the PIA to govern. If National Assembly really wants to respect the PIA, it is the board of directors of NNPC Limited they should be talking to, because the management team is not subject to the Federal Executive Council, is not subject to the National Assembly, they are subject to the board of directors. But is the government really willing to let NNPC be that? If I raise issue with you, you say you want fact, you will say, why is NNPC Limited going to Kulami River that has been suspended for 2 years? Is it because of 2027 election or because of commerciality? So you can't just be picking and choosing. All right? You are talking about 200 trillion missing. But you are asking NNPC to do a lot of things. You are even giving tax incentive to construct road. Tied to what? Those are the issues the National Assembly should be more interested in, because they are the owner of the Federation budget. They are not the owner of NNPC budget, according to the PIA. So I'm not diverting you. You ask me how should NNPC be run to the commercial. That is the intention of PIA. And I just happen to, by God's grace, be intentionally involved during the process. If we follow the PIA, they won't be accounting for 200 trillion and it's going to be missing when you have stakeholders that will query you, not even the National Assembly at that point in time. And by the way, if you go from the beginning of the PIA, page 1, to the last page of the PIA, you will see a mantra there: transparency and accountability.
Yes. I was actually coming to that what practical steps should be taken now. There's a new management at the NNPC Limited. What practical steps should be taken now by the Senate, by the NNPC Limited, and by the executive, I must say, perhaps to clarify the facts, to restore public trust, and to ensure accountability?
Listen, there's nothing wrong in what the National Assembly is doing. No, that's their responsibility. But they must not be transactional about it. They must be transformational. And that means they must be willing to listen. They must be willing to have conversation. They don't have an understanding of the accounting principle or the petroleum economic principle governing the oil and gas industry. In their committee, who is the advisor? Who did they give the book to review first? Are those people certified? That is the beginning. The government must have competent workforce, and they must be prepared to do it. Secondly, the National Assembly must come to terms with the PIA that they passed. I want to bet you, have they engaged anybody that is involved in the drafting and implementing the PIA to educate them, because all of them are new. Majority of the people involved in the PIA are no longer there in the National Assembly. And they've been there for nearly 2 years. Have they read the PIA to understand the institutional requirement? And NNPC itself, for the first time, we have a competent board. Is the president going to allow them to function? There are so many things that even the National Assembly themselves, I just look at them at times and laugh.
The question also, Prof, should be, should the president still remain the Minister of Petroleum Resources?
The president has never told you he's the Minister of Petroleum, Asi.
He has never told us. So why do we have a Minister of State? We don't have a substantive minister, just like we have in other ministries.
Nancy,
Yes,
I just asked you a question. Has the president ever addressed himself as the Minister of Petroleum?
And the president has not come out outrightly to say, I am not the Minister of Petroleum. Has he also come out to say that when it's all in the media space that he's the Minister of Petroleum Resources?
But I don't want us to move away from this 200 trillion.
Yes,
that's
Prof, I'm not moving away from it, because we're also looking at the governance processes ensured in the PIA.
Listen, I'm in tune with your question. I'm not afraid. There are two conditions to be a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Condition number one, nomination by the president. Condition number two, you know it, don't you? Consent of the Senate. And when you don't have the consent of the Senate and you don't nominate yourself, that means you are not the minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's a constitutional requirement. You can turn it the way you want. That's why El Rufai, till today, is not a minister under Tinubu. He was nominated, but did not receive the consent of the Senate. And so when I see the National Assembly making noise, whereas there are laws that they pass that are not followed, I look at it as an harassment of NNPC. By the way, I don't do anything for NNPC. I'm not defending them. I'm not looking for a job from them. I'm on the public side. Let's look at the PIA again when it comes to the oil and gas sector.
Yeah, Prof, but because the way you're also looking at it is as if that NNPC is just a saint. Has NNPC been entirely a saint?
No.
Yes.
No, not at all.
As we close, yes. Answer that, and what do you expect within the next few days? Because they've been given 11 questions to answer. What should we expect?
If you have the question, kindly send it to me. I would look at it. They will respond. The National Assembly cannot ask anybody a question and you don't respond. That's contempt. You can be sent to jail for that matter. But the National Assembly must come to terms with the fact that NNPC, in essence, may still be a public institution, but in reality, it's a liability company. And they must begin to deal with NNPC like that, and quickly. And if I don't say it, I won't be happy. If the PIA is going to be effective, the president needs a board for the Petroleum Commission, and the president needs a board for the Petroleum Authority.
Okay.
And he doesn't have them.
Okay. I think we need to leave it at that, Professor Iledare. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Yes, let's see what happens in the next few days, if clarifications will indeed be out from even the Senate itself and the NNPC Limited itself. We are waiting, and let's see what comes out. Thank you, Prof.
Well, I give you a rain check. When you have information, we'll debate it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
By the way, I'm not saying NNPC is a saint. We're addressing the 200 trillion. Okay. Next time, we can talk about NNPC as to what they can do to be more transparent, accountable, and fiscally responsible.
Thank you very much, Prof. All right, I've been speaking, bless you, sir. I've been speaking with Professor Wumi Iledare, Professor of Economics, and we've been talking about the alleged 210 trillion naira financial discrepancy in NNPC's limited financials, according to the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. A few days' time, let's see how that goes. That's a much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for watching. As always, I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. Bye for now. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.